Hi folks, in this video I'm going to talk about a concept I think is quite important. It's also somewhat hard to explain, but I feel I need to explain it. I need to try to flesh it out in some sort of way. So what I tend to do is think out loud or write and just see what comes out, and I'm hoping this is going to be a productive way of communicating this concept. And so I've talked a lot in other videos about this idea that the body's self-organizing. So the body's always trying its best to heal and to self-organize. For example, where is it? It's almost gone. I got a cut here on Saturday and it's healing on its own. I'm not having to divert my conscious attention towards this. It's just healing on its own. Obviously this is a small thing, but all level of problems our body is going to make an effort to heal, and it will have the wisdom to heal that in a very smart way without us even having to think about it, because the body has this wisdom that I don't think we can begin to comprehend. We can't really understand how these things happen, but they happen and they just keep on happening. You know, you're alive now and you've been alive for however many years, and you're going to keep on being alive just because it's just going to happen, and your body's going to take care of you as best it can. So this is a governing principle that we need to accept and we need to understand, and I believe it helps us understand why we're in pain. If we're in pain, it's because in spite of our body's best efforts, then some need isn't being met on some level. So that's one level of it. We have this self-organizing principle within the body. Now, part of this, and this is what we're going to talk about today, is that that self-organizing principle is there, but it is also dependent on our actions. So we need to be able to notice that signal. So for a simple example would be, say your body, in a bid to self-organize, to keep you healthy, it needs maybe extra water. So it's going to make you feel thirsty so that you go and drink water. But if you ignore that signal, then the body's not going to be able to self-organize in the way that it wants. So it's partially dependent on us hearing that notification, we'll say, and us then acting upon it. So what I want to talk about today is those notifications. So I'll maybe clarify this. On Friday I met with some friends and we ended up talking about social media and how, whether it's good or bad for us, and we mostly agreed it was bad for us, but the point I was making is that it disconnects us from ourselves. It helps us connect outwards to other people, but I believe that it disconnects us from what's going on internally, because it drowns out, it overstimulates us and drowns out our innate signals and messages and our body intelligence or awareness. So I'm using this term notifications because it's sort of a parallel with, social media and getting notifications. So you can think about it like that. You're on Facebook, you get a notification because someone commented on your photo or whatever, and that's drawing your attention to something that needs to happen, but you can either ignore that or you can act upon it. So within your body, you're going to have notifications like, I'm hungry, I'm craving salt, I'm craving sweet things, I'm tired, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling whatever it is. And a lot of these things are really obvious to you, and it's an interesting thing about how we will trust the wisdom of our cravings, such as for thirst, for hunger perhaps, and for sleep, but then we will ignore some of them for other reasons, and that's more of a cultural issue, and I shouldn't go on this tangent, but that's a tangent for another day to do with nutrition. But anyway, back on track. So we have these notifications, and what I believe is happening is that we have lost the sensitivity to feel those more subtle notifications, those notifications that say this isn't quite right. You can kind of think of it as intuition or wisdom, or more so intuition. We lose this ability to perceive those little things, and I believe that the way that happens is through a number of ways. it's generally, particularly if you're in chronic pain, it's generally related to several injuries, several things over time that create these protective mechanisms in the body. So the way I represent this is with this drawing. Let's see if you can see that. So it's a little green man. He looks green, yeah. And it doesn't matter that he's green, but the point is, this is a little man, and we have these white parts that are kind of empty parts. This is supposed to represent emptiness, metaphorically, and it's basically this idea that maybe you have an injury, so you could have maybe a broken toe, a lateral ankle sprain, a knee ligament sprain or rupture, hip injury, diaphragm restriction, more so on the left side, an elbow injury, a shoulder injury, dental work, braces, root canal, whatever it is. Basically, it's like maps of where our body has felt trauma, and what usually happens is we lose a connection to that. We lose a connection. So if I've injured my shoulder, perhaps, I injured my shoulder 5 years ago, and my shoulder never felt quite the same ever again, and it's like I've lost a certain amount of familiarity. It's like we were best friends before, and now, it's that awkward, like, I don't know, this is an irrelevant tangent, but, we lose that connection. Sorry, I go off on tangents. We lose that connection, and I believe that the issue ultimately, when you're dealing with chronic pain and you don't know why, and you don't have an answer, or you have a few potential answers but nothing really makes sense, or nothing really gets you better, it's because the signals are there, the notifications are there, but you've lost the ability to notice them and to consequently act upon them. So as I've touched on in some of my other videos, I talk about the idea of this, your story. So the video I did 2 weeks ago was sort of talking about my own story, my own dealing with chronic pain, just to give you a sense of how I'm connecting the whole thing together, and to help you see that perhaps there is a bigger story behind your pain. And I believe that the answers lie in everything that happens along that timeline. So you have this injury, and you have that response to the injury. You have these emotional factors, this fear of movement, and all of these things kind of pepper that storyline and that timeline. And this is where we begin to see the answer, and this is where we begin to see that disconnect. So you can kind of think of all those major events in your life as diminishing your body's self-awareness and self-connection to some small degree, and that's going to happen with any kind of injury pretty much. But ideally, when you have an injury, you will regain what you've lost. But because it's one of these good and bad things about the human body, we tend to keep on going no matter what. We tend to just cope and deal with things and put things off. So we'll cope with an injury, with a problem, for a very long time, and that's great, but that means that we never really address it fully, and so we never really restore that to 100%. So I believe that, I couldn't say this with certainty, but in, say, 99.9% of cases of chronic pain, really the issue is that you've had a number of these injuries, or it doesn't have to be injuries, it can be traumatic experiences, or even experiences that you don't even think of consciously as traumatic, but experiences that really leave an imprint and that really challenge you in some way, and maybe challenge your view of the world or your view of yourself, things that you kind of throw you off a bit. All of these things just take a slight toll, or maybe a significant toll, but the point is that all together over time they create this baggage, we'll say, and that baggage is, all of these bits of disconnection where your body has lost that connection, has lost the ability to control that. So a simple example is, a really common example is glutes. People tend to have no voluntary control of their glute muscles, and they just sort of lose that usually because of movement restrictions and postural habits. But it's just like that. You lose that voluntary control and awareness of a certain body part or a certain signal coming from a body part. And what that means is that over time, all of these things are happening, and the issue is that it's so gradual that you kind of take it as normal, or you kind of think, oh, it's just aging or whatever it is. It's just part of getting older. But you're slowly chipping away, and then you have a breaking point, or a point where you're tipped over the edge and this sudden pain sets in, or the pain maybe is even just so gradual and it becomes constant that you just don't really question it, but then it's a constant thing, it's an everyday thing. But the point is that we have all these little gradual things chipping away at us, and we lose that ability to pick up those signals. And what I would always say is that this didn't happen overnight. It's been happening for a long time, and your body has been telling you that something's been happening, but you have been deaf or blind to those signals. So I don't really want to go on about this too long. I'm hoping that kind of illustrates that idea clearly enough. But basically it's this idea that your life story, your baggage, your injuries, your experiences have taken their toll in some way, and the extent to which that is depends on the individual, depends on how much you've taken care of yourself and how much you've had the opportunity to take care of yourself. But if you're in pain, your body has dealt with a lot of things, and it has a lot of baggage, and it has resulted in you having less awareness of yourself and less awareness of the notifications and the signals within your body. And I think the place to begin and the place to start is very much to kind of slow things down and to look internally and to sit with yourself with an internal focus, rather than always looking for that external solution to your problem. The foam roller that's better than the other foam rollers, the acupuncturist, the chiropractor that your friend recommends. These things can be great and all that, but chances are you've tried that, and chances are if you're watching this, you have your doubts about whether that is effective. And as I'll always say, anything that's effective by an external source is made effective by the environment that's going on internally. So if you can set yourself up for failure, or you can set yourself up for success with how you take care of your body. So if you look after yourself, you can optimize the benefit you get from a chiropractor or acupuncturist, but you can also sabotage any work that a chiropractor or a physio or whatever would do to you by what you do to yourself and how you live your life. And we can't, I can't stress this enough, you can't outsmart these biological principles, because they have applied to every single human being ever and probably always will. So we might as well get on board with them and work with them. So hopefully you're beginning to get a sense of what I'm trying to communicate. Hopefully it's made sense. But it's this idea that we lose connection. So let's talk maybe about some solutions. So as I said, I think you should begin with looking internally and taking time to simply listen. And this is kind of abstract, but this is why I like things like breathing, why I go on and on and on and on about breathing. A breathing practice is the gift that keeps on giving. I started a proper breathing practice maybe 4 years ago, but I'd say 7 years ago I was told to do it, and it just didn't make sense. But in those 4 years, I keep learning new things, and it's not like you reach a point and that's it, and then you let it go. You're always going to gain and gain and gain from something like a breathing practice, and you're just going to gain so much awareness, and with awareness comes control, and you can literally mold your life in the way you respond to things, because you're aware of what's happening and you're aware of how your body responds. So you begin to learn the distinctions between feeling good. Do you feel good because you're running on adrenaline and on stress hormones, or do you feel good because your metabolism is high and you feel warm and safe, or why do you feel good? So it's no longer that you've got 3 notifications like thirst, hunger, sadness, and 4 sleep, but you've got all of these little shades in between, and you can act accordingly. So, you know, people will always say on fitness pages, are you really hungry or are you thirsty? They're probably trying to guilt you into not eating because you should never eat because you're a bad person for eating and all that. But maybe you're actually thirsty. But, you know, simply saying, you know, just drink water instead isn't necessarily helpful. What if you had the awareness of your own body, that you could discern between genuine thirst, or is it that you're thirsty, or is it that you need salt, is it that you need fruit, is it that you need to eat something? What is it? And no one can really answer that for you. An infographic on Instagram can't answer that for you. You can answer that if you take a few minutes per day and just build over time and begin to become reacquainted with yourself and fill in these blank spots in your body. Yeah. So hopefully that makes sense. What I would say to you is start with a breathing practice, start with meditation, whatever way you want to call it. I don't think it's really about meditation or reaching some astral realm or something. I think it's largely about time off with an internal focus where things can begin to happen and you can begin noticing things happening, and with that you can be more informed and more proactive and more productive. So that's it. I kept it short for once, short enough. Let me know if you have any questions. I have all the free resources below, and I will see you in another video.